Good morning. My name is Meredith Rowe, and many years ago I was actually sitting right out there where you are today on my first day as a student here at HGSE. And today I thought what I would do is tell you a bit about the work that I've been doing since that time. And I'll be talking about development during early childhood, and in particular about children's language development and the role that the early home environment plays in that process. But before I start, what I'd like to do is show you a video. And some of you may have seen this earlier this summer when it went viral on social media. It's a video of a dad and his 1.5-year-old son.
Right, don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that, yeah. Yeah. Like, go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. Then was like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, what in the world? But don't do it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Come on, that's crazy.
Okay, so there's a lot going on there, and not only is it cute, right, but what they're doing is they're having a conversation back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the reason I like that video so much is because it's exactly the type of interactions in the home environment that we see promote language development, right? So let me tell you a little bit about why language development is important and then about the work that we've done in thinking about how to promote it. So this income achievement gap in reading is one of the reasons language is so important early on, because language is such a strong predictor of reading in school. And so what we know now, based on the past 5 or 10 years of research, is that the income achievement gap in reading is actually evident when children arrive at school in kindergarten. So in these data, you can see what they're doing is they're plotting children's reading skills from kindergarten through 2nd grade for 5 different quintiles of socioeconomic status, with the top line being the children from the higher socioeconomic backgrounds and the bottom line being the children from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And what you see is that when children arrive in kindergarten, there's already a gap in their reading skills that's about 1 standard deviation in size, which is about 1 grade level. And then you also see that it doesn't really get much smaller over the years of schooling. So what is reading in kindergarten, right? I mean, most children don't start kindergarten reading books, but what they're measuring here are skills that are very predictive of reading. So for example, decoding, or being able to decompose the text on the page, or children's oral language skills, such as vocabulary. So we know that vocabulary is an extremely strong predictor of learning to read and school success more generally. So for example, if you have more words, you really have more concepts and more knowledge, and it sets children up to succeed in school if they arrive with a large vocabulary. And what this figure is depicting is the fact that that income achievement gap in reading in 4th grade can actually be explained away by children's vocabulary in kindergarten. So the important point here is that if we could boost children's vocabulary during that early childhood period so that they come to school with large vocabularies, then we should be able to promote reading and school success for all children, okay? So one thing we've been interested in my work is understanding variation in children's vocabulary growth across the early childhood period and what factors contribute to that vocabulary growth. So one thing we know that plays a role is language input. And by this, I just mean the children's home language environment, the talk and communication that that child is exposed to over the first 5 years. And what we know from previous work, this is a seminal study by Hart and Risley that was done in the 1990s that I actually learned about when I was a student here. They found that there's a lot of variation in how much parents communicate with their children, and it varies by socioeconomic status. So that children from higher income families over the entire early childhood period may hear up to 30 million more words than children from lower income backgrounds. And importantly, they showed that this translates into different trajectories of vocabulary growth for the children. So the main point or takeaway point from this work was that it's the quantity of talk that matters, right? All right, well now fast forward 20, 25 years, here we are today. We've been studying vocabulary development in early childhood. There's many, many people out there putting a lot of work into looking at home environments. What are parents doing with children? What are the factors that contribute to this variability in vocabulary? And so now, which slice of this, if you think of this pie chart as the variability in vocabulary to be explained, which slice do you think is the quantity of parent talk? Yeah, it's the green one, right? So we've actually learned that it's not so much the quantity of the talk that children are hearing, but it's the quality of that talk. And this is the orange part of the circle. I'll put this up here. And the gray part is the other factors that I'm not talking about today. But basically, sorry, what we've learned when we look at parent-child interaction is that it's the quality that matters much, much more than the quantity. So parents shouldn't be concerned with talk to your child all the time. They should be more concerned with having high quality, rich, back and forth interactions that promote learning. Okay, so what we have found, if we think about what is quality, one factor that matters a lot is conversations, the back and forth. And so this is an example of one study we've done where my former student, Rachel Romeo, studied a whole bunch of preschool children from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds, and she found that the children who experienced more back and forth, what we call conversational turns at home, had greater language skills. And she also found that the reason they had greater language skills is because they were more efficient at processing language. So this was an fMRI study where she scanned the brains of all of these preschool children when they were listening to language and found that the children that had experienced more back and forth conversations were better able to process language, more efficient at it, and that's why they had better skills. So this makes sense. Language is a social process, and it's the back and forth that matters. So what have we been doing with this information? So for the past 5 years or so in my lab, we've started developing some interventions for parents. We've learned over the years that parents want information, all parents, and that parents that know more about child development interact with their children in ways that can promote their learning. So we've been coming up with different ways to give parents information. And in this domain, we've been coming up with ways to give them information about how to have conversations with their children of different ages. So we have interventions for parents of infants, and we have interventions for parents of older children. And so I'll just tell you really briefly about one intervention that we conducted recently for parents of 4-year-olds. And so here we've also learned that you can't just tell parents, engage in more conversations with your children, because that doesn't really work. You need to give them more tools, more ideas, more things to work with. So for parents of 4-year-olds, what we've done is we've told them, we've given them a training that emphasizes that their talk is a great way to get their children ready for kindergarten. And in this case, we talk about ready talk, where the R, E, A, D, and Y each stand for a certain type of talk that we know helps promote learning in children of this age. So for example, the R is about reminiscing about the past. Preschool children love to talk about things that they've done with you in the past, and that actually promotes learning and other skills. E is providing explanations, A is asking questions, D is discussing the future, and then the Y is this idea that you, the parent, can make a big difference in your child's development by engaging in this type of talk on a daily basis. And so just some quick results, I'm running out of time, but when we do this work, we find that in a recent study, the parents who had our Ready Talk training compared to a control group, 1 month later when they were recording their meal times with their children at home, they're engaging their children in more back and forth turn taking. And they're also using more of this Ready Talk that we explained to them. So basically, this is just one example of the kind of work that I've been doing, focusing on the home environment and children's language development. And I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about my work, and I wish you guys all the best in this year at HGSE. Thank you.